Don't let some guy on the internet, probably with a big, dirty, cloudy looking tank, tell you that you don't need to water change. Spreading this theory that water changing is unnecessary is just an excuse to be lazy. Yeah, I said it. Oh, we're gonna drop the mic on this one. Let's go. The lazy will always find a good excuse to be lazy, and everything on the internet can easily be taken out of context. Can some tanks go very long periods without needing a water change? Sure, but there are many variables involved. Does this mean that our fish tanks don't need water changes at all? Absolutely not. Everyone says to keep it simple. Doing less is better than doing more. That this hobby isn't complicated. That's all bullshit. This hobby is very complicated for many, but we all eventually get to a place with our individual tanks where it isn't complicated for us anymore. Thanks to some wisdom from my buddy Jay over at Bulk Reef Supply, I've changed my thinking from calling this a hobby to recognizing that this is more of a lifestyle. Hobbies can change at any time. Hobbies can be seasonal. Your partner can say, I don't like that hobby, stop that or we're through. That ain't happening with these tanks, guys. Not at all. This may start out as a complicated hobby, but for those of us that stick with it, it becomes a less complicated lifestyle. Us long-timers tend to forget what it was like being a beginner, and we tend to treat everyone as if they should know more than what they do. That's not how I do things here on this channel. This will always be a beginner-friendly zone, and veterans can still be entertained by videos like this where I let loose a little bit. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We should want to keep our fish in the best environments we can possibly provide for them. So why would I find ways to be lazy and keep them in subpar conditions just so I can claim to have a fish tank while doing as little work as possible? This lifestyle takes work, people. And yes, eventually you'll get to a point where the work is reduced because your tank matures as well as yourself, and your tank becomes easy to maintain once you understand what's going on. But that doesn't mean it's completely hands-off either. Water changing and the need for it is level 1 information. Calling it a myth now after 20 years of water changing because you needed an excuse to do less work is just that, an excuse. But let's talk about some context that these no water change guys conveniently don't like to discuss. Nitrate removal is only one of the many benefits to water changing. Let me say that again. Removing nitrates is only one of the many benefits to water changing. But let's take this step by step. Hey Dylan, Brine, and Steven, and Lisa, and Betty Boop. I'm just making up names, guys. I don't know any of these people. All of us do not have the same tank that you do. It's so easy to go on a forum and talk about the facts when those facts only pertain to your tank. There are those that say, I never do water changes and my fish are thriving. What you don't see is their big, ugly, cloudy tank filled with more plants than fish. There are those that say water changing is a huge myth. Creating a self-sustaining ecosystem is the true aquarium keeping. What you don't see is that they've always bought full-grown adult fish and never had to worry about their growth. Or they bought them young and small and did plenty of water changes. Then, when they reached adult size, decided to add some matrix and plants to keep nitrates down successfully, and then decided water changing was a myth. My point being that some people will always find a way to do as little as possible and then justify it, and then call you crazy for the work you choose to do to ensure that your fish have a thriving environment. Okay, let's talk about some facts with as much context as possible. Of course, you can get your tank to complete the nitrogen cycle and stay with very little to no nitrates at all. That's very possible with the addition of plants or biomedia like Chem Matrix, which can eventually grow anaerobic bacteria that converts those nitrates, completing the cycle. But not everyone can do that, Timmy. You need context, my man. You can't say, well, my cichlids do fine with plants, so just add some plants and you don't have to do water changes anymore. First of all, cichlids are a wide variety. Plants that can be kept with some American cichlids may not be possible to be kept with African cichlids. So let's use a little bit more detail here. Many of us that keep African cichlids, like myself, cannot keep live plants in the tank. These animals will destroy them or just eat them. Sure, I've seen some people do it successfully though, congrats to them. That's another reason why you can't say one way or another is definitive here. What doesn't work for me and my tanks may work for somebody else. That guy with the plants in his African tank right now is like, I'm glad you clarified that, Kev. My 210-gallon African cichlid tank used to get anywhere from 80 to 160 parts per million in 1 week. No, God! Does the you never need to water change bus stop here? I hope not. My fish would be dead or dying in about 2 to 3 weeks without water changes, which is why I've always done big 80% weekly water changes. It's the only way to keep nitrates down. Since adding the CChem matrix to my filters, I've been able to get nitrates down to about 40 parts per million in a week's time. Much better. Still don't fall in the category of never needing a water change though. Even though my source water contains about 15 to 20 parts per million of nitrate in it already, keeping this tank at 40 is a miracle for me. But you see what I just did there? I gave you some context. I didn't just say a 210 gallon tank using matrix gets down to 40 parts per million of nitrate in a week. No man, it's more complicated than that. How many fish do I have? How much do I feed? How much algae is in the tank? How much nitrates are in my source water? Context matters, guys. But what people don't do in the forums is give you all the details about why their results are their results. Without context, someone will go to another keeper and say, well, Kev said that a 210 gallon tank with matrix gets you down to 40 parts per million exactly. So that's what it is. It's never that simple, guys. This is a complicated part I'm talking about, understanding the variables. And yes, it is true that adult fish can handle much more than 40 parts per million of nitrate. There are studies out there that say they can handle way more, like in the 400 parts per million range. But will I ever let my tanks get that high? Nope. Will I ever suggest that you let your tanks get that high? Never. Now, while I could possibly add more matrix to my tank to get my nitrates down even further than the 40 I currently reach in 1 week's time, what's the point? I am still not going to stop water changing just because my nitrates stay low. Maybe I won't need to do them weekly or as big, but just stop water changing completely because my nitrates stay low? Never. Which leads me to my next segment. Nitrate removal is only one of many benefits to water changing. Some of these guys that have achieved very low to zero nitrates now want to believe that they don't need to water change anymore. So they watch videos and read forums where other lazy people agree with them, and they form a little squad and spread their findings without any context to the entire fish keeping community while having dirty, cloudy looking tanks. But hey, they can be hands off, so win-win, right? And I guarantee there'll be comments down below this video with guys that say, I have never water changed in months and years, never ever in my life. Well, congrats, buddy. But I don't want to keep a cloudy, dungy looking tank that you can barely see through. I don't want to keep barely surviving fish. I don't want to keep plants, I want to keep fish. But understand, this is just my preference. I am in no way saying that those of you that love to have more plants than fish are wrong. No way. That's the beauty of this lifestyle, guys. You get to keep your tank the way you want to keep it. My opinion of an ugly tank is your prized possession. And my opinion of a beautiful tank is your plain looking boring tank, right? I get it, guys. Not trying to put anyone's preference down here. I just want to talk about the facts with context. If you're able to keep a tank that has achieved little to no nitrates, congratulations. But water changing is still beneficial. Do you have to do them weekly like I do? Absolutely not. But you should still do them for the following reasons. Fish consume nutrients, vitamins, and minerals from their diet and from the water. When your water gets old and depleted of these minerals, your fish are not getting as much nourishment as they could be getting if you did periodic water changes. Water changes replenish these minerals. Sure, you could dose with products like CChem Cichlid Trace. I do that as well all the time. But nothing will beat the minerals found in a fresh water change. Many fish are also constantly releasing growth stunting hormones into your tank water. It's how the big fish stays the big fish. And if you weren't aware, a stunted fish has a stunted life. Water changing removes these hormones from the tank, helping all your fish to grow at a normal growth rate. Now, if you went to the store and bought all adult-sized fish and threw them in your tank and never experienced this, you'd be that guy in the forum saying, growth stunting is a myth, bro. But some of us have experienced this and can provide more context. It is widely known in this lifestyle that water changing helps to promote fish growth, especially in young and juvenile fish. Let's say you've achieved zero nitrates by way of an excellent biomedia source like CChem Matrix without the use of plants. In your case, you'll still have phosphates, which can contribute to algae growth, making your tank look kind of ugly. I'm just saying. Moral of this story is, even if you can get your nitrates to very low levels or even to stay at zero, that's only one part of the puzzle, one slice of the pie, one fish in a barrel. There are still many benefits to water changing. Doing so at least every 2 to 4 weeks will keep your fish and tank thriving. So please, if you're gonna tell people that the need for water changing is a myth, at least show them your ugly tank first. I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not.